Hello guys, what's going on? Today I want to talk a little bit about this book, The Panic of 1819 by Murray freaking Rothbard. A very interesting book. Talks about this panic or crisis. It was not a crisis. Murray Rothbard says in the book that I think the Bureau of Economy from the United States, or like the highest bureau or board, I don't know, or department, I don't know exactly how the Americans call it, but anyways, this department, they say that the crisis of 1836-37 was the first crisis in American history. But this the Panic of 1819 has a lot had a lot of characteristics that are common to crisis, to modern crisis. Like inflation, and then a drop in prices, and unemployment, like mass unemployment. So yeah, it can be said to be like the first crisis, if we consider like a more I don't know, like if we consider like the real terms, the real things that happen, the concrete things, you can call it like the first huge crisis in America. But anyways, I don't have enough knowledge for that. Very interesting book. I've known Murray Rothbard for almost 10 years, and he's amazing. He's so amazing. His works of not only his theoretical work, but his historical work is insane. His researchers are insane. The amount of names and quotes and sources for data and if everything it's insane. It's very, there's a lot of thing in this book regarding these things that I said. And I've read the greatest American Depression. We talked about the crisis of 1929, the most famous crisis in history, maybe. And it has like the same structure of this book, basically. But this one is way bigger because there's much more information, and the crisis was way bigger, But anyways, very interesting book. Murray Rothbard writing style is very, very easy to read, to understand. It's so, you can read it like so quick. Anyway, I took some notes. I'm doing that now. Taking notes of the things that I read, in order not to forget. When you write stuff down, it's like interacting with information, so you tend to absorb it better. And it's very interesting because the crisis was what happened after the war against England. And it was interesting what he says, because America was forbidden to export a lot of tissue, so that they did like in the at the end of the 18th century and very early 19th century. So their domestic industry developed a lot. Their industry, like hard industry, not hard industry for the day, which was basically tissue manufacturing, especially in New England, and they developed greatly, and a lot of craftsmen back then, because it wasn't at that moment a very industrialized, complex city that became later them. So in the cities, the biggest part of the citizens, of the workers, were like autonomous. I don't know if I'm using the correct word, but they work for themselves and were craftsmen, or work like in very, very small family business. And they could not win a lot of money, but they could grow because of the war. And with the war, of course, there was inflation. That's a very common practice, since the beginning of the time. It's older than walking ahead, as we say here in Brazil. And after the war, which I think it ended in 1816, if I'm not mistaken, there was a few more years, and then the crash happened, the panic happened. And it's interesting to see how people react back then, you know, not only like politicians, but also the journalists, especially if we see how nowadays journalism is pretty much, especially the mainstream. If you go like on internet and some independent media, the level is way better. You know, the level of the discussions are way better. But like on TV, it's very, very low level, with all the respect, but it's much more of a strict business of calling people attention rather than trying to discuss things. Anyways, you know, and so I'm just trying to remember here. Not remembered. Yeah, remember what I wrote. And it's interesting. Like he said that the understanding, like the mainstream understanding. Look how crazy this is that the crisis was caused by credit expansion. Everyone knew that back then. That's very interesting, and it's very nice to see the terms they used back then. I don't know, maybe because they didn't have like a formal economic theory so developed as we have today, and they have like very good analogies, a lot of good analogies, and so they say like fictitious capital, which is like the expansion, you know, the part of the notes of the banks that are not sustained in specie. And anyways, so they made a lot of money. The industry has grown a lot with the war, the domestic industry. I forgot to say that the exportations, you know, went, you know, very, very high levels because of the war too. They couldn't exportate industrial goods, only, you know, like commodities. So commodities they did good during this period, and they understood that the huge problem of the war was the credit expansion. And as I said, the politicians know it, the journalists know it, and it's a very interesting thing that Murray Rothbard said too, is that the opinions, like the solutions, you know, the proposals, you couldn't see like a clear division between groups. You know, people were mixed. So the northern states like New England, not New England, Boston, New York, Philadelphia, which is in Pennsylvania, Vermont, no, Rhode Island. You know, this up north states, they were more, you know, hard currency. They inflated way less than the states, the western states or the southern states. So like Kentucky, Missouri, Tennessee, these states would inflate more. But even in these states, when they see about the proposals, and the book is divided in three big proposals that he talks about, which is debtors relief, you know, the moratorium of the debt, you know, like forgiving of the debt, or giving a little bit more of ways for the debtor to pay, or, you know, relieving his situation, like he wouldn't lose his property if he couldn't pay the debt, some things like that, you know. And proposals for the creation of loan offices, which is basically credit expansion, and all the plans that were discussed back then. And it was so it was debtors relief and loan offices on a state and on a federal level, you know, because there were already the Bank of the United States, you know, but weirdly the Bank of the United States were more, you know, like hard currency than expansionist, as I could understand here. Um, every central bank or central bank wannabe is inflationist per se. If you think praxeologically, that's what we learn with Mises. But if you compare like the Bank of the United States with the banks from the southern or western states, the Bank of the United States was way less inflationist than the state banks. And that was a question because there is a thing about the wildcat banks, and these banks were very far away from the Bank of the United States or the hard currency banks, so they would inflate a lot, and it would make and this would be a problem. But since it was a little bit more separated in these terms, they could they could do it. And that part, what I said was a little bit confusing, but I'm sorry. I'm trying to express yourself in another language is a bit harder. But anyways, and he talks about that too. So these three major proposals were not like clearly divided between the sectors of society. It was all like mixed. So there were people from like landlord that would approve debtors relief, because a lot of the debt was on titles of was a lot of, oh my god, the huge part of the debt was on titles from, not titles, but was debts of the debts against the federal government, regarding federal lands that were bought before the crash, before the panic. So the federal government was one of the hugest creditors, but there wasn't like a real division of that. And I'm sorry if this part is a little bit confusing. I'm sorry. But anyways, it's nice to see that. And it's nice to see that a lot of the discussions that the first thing, as I said, it's nice to see the level of the discussion, and Murray Rothbard said that too, like the level of the theoretical discussion and the proposals was very high. It was a very high level debate, and it wasn't, like, as I said, clearly divided. There were very famous and huge intellectuals and businessmen and politicians that defended the position in each of the sides. So there wasn't a clear division as there is like today, which is more clear in that sense. The division regarding economic issues, and in the end, a lot of these measures were taken. Like they allow banks to not to redeem the notes in specie, and some states really created loan offices, and which it's basically credit expansion too, and pyramiding that on Bank of the United States notes or treasury notes. So a lot of times they would increase the pyramid. So yeah, a lot of these things were actually done, but I think I'm not sure. The majority of them were actually temporary. But then, if we see how the world is today and how the economic system works today, if we think like in these terms, in the end, it wasn't actually temporary. It was, forever, for eternity. Not for eternity, but became like a real thing. Like in Brazil, it's like a law, and that's sad. And a lot of other nice things. As I said, the some terms that I use, so like fictitious capital, and it's interesting. Like some of the people that defended hard currency and they were against debtors relief, talked about a return to economy and industry. So it's very interesting to see that, like, economy would be like literally saving, and industry would be like hard work, not about forget about speculation and fictitious capital and expanding in luxury goods. There was a very harsh campaign about against the luxury goods, because a huge part of he doesn't talk about numbers, but it's very visible for us. When people became richer, they tend to buy more superfluous luxury goods. Superfluous, okay? It's superfluous for me, but for the person that bought, it might not be. And they had a slogan like saying that we should return to economy and industry. And it's nice to see like how they say that inflation leads people to being lazy, and then they forget about the hard work. They tend to be more immediatalists. Their temporal preference gets higher. They forget about the how hard to be, not to become rich, but how hard how hard it is to have a comfortable life. I'm talking about in modern terms because I forgot the words they use here, but it's very interesting. They say that, very interesting to look at that. People like 200 years ago saying that, and today it's basically what we live. We live in a world of very extreme consumption. I'm not saying that I don't do that, but it's weird that back then people already criticized it, and not like also in a moral way, but also in an economical way, like saying that this is not healthy economically. That's very interesting. And Philip Bagos talks about it in Deep Freeze, about how inflation changes the culture of the Icelandic people regarding work and economy, and being more prudent with your finances and all that. So yeah. And another thing I forgot to say, another measure, tariffs against imports that was also proposed. And the discussions are so nice, like people calling it out and some people defending it, especially some industrialists. But I think regarding tariffs, this were a bit more, it wasn't that strong as loan offices and debtors relief proposals, which were bigger and stronger. The tariffs against imports were not that defended, and their arguments is very good. Look how lucid these people were back then. Protectionism. Protectionism. Let me see the real word, the exact word, because I'm trying to read in Portuguese and translate for you. Protective tariffs. So the protective tariffs works as a way of central planning of the economy. People said that back then, before Karl Marx or before any socialist come up with that. He talked about the importance of auctions, because of how dynamic they were and how quick they were, and people wanted to tax that too. Insane. Not insane, it's expected from people that want to maintain the status quo. Some other small proposals that he said was public, how can I say that? Public constructions, was also something that was discussed back then. Internal improvements financed by the states. Like building, to build public buildings and bridges and monuments and all that as a way of mitigating the crisis, the unemployment and the wage level. So yeah, almost 20 minutes. I'm sorry because I got a little bit, I'm a little bit prolixic, you guys noticed. But anyways, very interesting book, worth reading, very easy reading. I don't have a huge knowledge on economy, but I could, read this without any problem. Very nice, very, very, very good to read, very nice, very smooth to read, and yeah, it's worth it. So feel free to let a comment here if you like the video or not, and if you have already read the book, what do you think about it? Okay, bye bye guys.